So, welcome everyone. This is going to be the last webinar of the year. It's all going to be about Loxone Config and the app release version 14.5. So we're going to talk about lots of the new features that we've got coming in. Well, it's already been released. I think it was released a couple of weeks ago now, last week. So we're going to talk about some of the new software features and also have a bit of a recap over what products we've released this year. Take the opportunity to discuss them, why we have these new features, what they're for, and how we're going to use them, and how you implement them. And also take the opportunity for you guys to ask questions should you have them. I've got a demo rig set up so I can also configure them and show you how you would approach configuring them in real time. The chat is enabled, so if you have any questions that arise throughout, please do pop them in the chat. I'll try and cover them as frequently as possible. If I miss them or it requires a bit of more of an in-depth answer, Tyrion might jump in and answer them for me in the chat. Cool. So what we will do then is, if I, in a moment, start sharing my screen, if I get my presentation in order, we will start through with some of the latest features. Got another screen down here, I'm not just looking at the floor. Fantastic. Okay. Let's press go and hope for the best. Cool, fantastic. So, Loxone Config and app version 14.5. And it's really important that the app is also expressed here because there's features that are more prevalent in the Loxone app rather than within Loxone Config, but they're going to benefit your whole overall installation. So, of course, things that you're buying, things that you guys are purchasing, and where Loxone is kind of earning its money is through hardware, but that's really only 15% of our business. And we are actually primarily a software company. And that is what we're going to be focusing on today. All of the features that we are bringing out through these updates, this is all software, and these are what are empowering the products that we are manufacturing to have all these great features for your installations. So let's go ahead and start with the Wallbox Manager. Now, we released the Wallbox about a year ago now, and of course, you've got various different applications of where you would install an EV charger, of course. Now, this could, of course, be in a residential setting or a commercial setting. In a residential setting, typically you're only going to have one, maybe two EV chargers, but it's very rare that you exceed that. Now, load balancing is going to be possibly a topic in a residential setting, but more so going to be in commercial settings where instead of having one or two EV chargers, you're now talking in multiples of 10 perhaps, where in single phase instances you could have a limited supply, perhaps 100 amps, and then same with three phase, but also depending on your scale, this could dramatically grow, but also decrease depending on the application. Now, with the Wallbox Manager, this is a new function block we've brought out, which enables you to load balance. So making sure that we are preventing any tripping of any fuses for the whole infrastructure behind the Wallboxes. But also able to distribute power appropriately. So if we think this could be looked at in two different aspects. We've got power distribution for making sure we're not going to be overloading our infrastructure, but also if we've got cheap or free electricity available, whether that be through a cheaper energy tariff or whether that be through a perhaps solar system or some sort of renewable installation, let's make that energy available for the EV charging. And then that then leads me on to the presetting costs. With the presetting costs, we can change how much the user is paying, whether they're charging from eco, this could be then our cheaper tariff, or our renewable sources, or priority mode, where with priority mode, it doesn't matter that we have that excess energy available, which could dynamically change, of course. We need to charge the car now. And perhaps maybe when you're on the road, you need to charge immediately. You need to charge within an hour or two. So that's where you could charge a different tariff price. And of course, user interface. User interface is really important so that you're getting an overview of where this energy is being or power is being distributed and giving you a status kind of overview of what's going on. So let's jump straight into Loxone Config. So what I just need to do is share my other screen. Okay, fantastic, cool. So into Loxone Config, tree devices and tree device Wallbox, and we will just navigate to, let's grab a single phase one. Of course, we can change which version we have. We could have multiple different types. So let's install this naturally outside. And let's do another one. And we'll also do 2 3-phase variants. There we go. So we've got our 4 Wallboxes there. You'll notice, I don't know whether this was available in the initial release of the Wallbox, but something that's been added in, possibly in the previous version, but possibly in the latest, is in addition to the installation location, naturally it's either going to be on a poster or on the wall, but if you've got multiple Wallboxes, similar to like you have with extensions in your Loxone panel, you could have multiple of the same type, and you want to be able to see if everything is in the correct location, if you've got them in a row, etc. So you'll notice now you have the ability with tree Wallboxes, explicitly with tree Wallboxes, the ability to define which row of Wallboxes they are and the position in the row, so they can perhaps flash in sequence, but then also identifying them. For this exercise, I'm just going to number them 1 to 4. And of course, I need to add my appropriate meters. So for my single phase ones, it's going to be coming with the Estron STM 230, which I've already downloaded from the Loxone library. And let's do the 3-phase version, which will be the 72. Perfect. Now, when it comes to configuring the Wallbox, we just need to click on the API connector and drag it onto the page. As you drag it onto the page, it will automatically create you a function block. And the most important thing that we do at this point, regardless of whether we're configuring with the energy manager or not, is that we have the power and also the meter reading there. So we need to just tick CP and MR, so current power and meter reading, and we expand our meter within the Modbus interface of the Wallbox. I need active power, and I need import active energy. Now, with active power, the Estron meter, a lot of Modbus meters actually, give you power in watts, but energy in kilowatt hours. So all Loxone meters, most function blocks will be expecting it in kilowatts or rather than watts. And because we are expecting it in kilowatts and we're giving it in watts, the Wallbox function block would potentially be thinking that we're charging the car at megawatts or gigawatts. But of course, that's not the case. It's just the unit for our input. So on some templates, it's already done. On this particular one, it's not. So you can see here the unit is set to watts. So first I need to adjust this for active power to kilowatts. But also just changing the unit is not going to solve the problem. I need to change the correction value. So input value 2. So we want to say that 1,000 watts, input value 2, equals 1 kilowatt. So input value 2 would be 1,000. That's our 1,000 watts. And our target is 1 kilowatt. We don't need to do anything with the energy reading because it's already in kilowatt hours. perhaps we'll update that on the Loxone library so you don't have to think about that in future. So we'll connect this to CP and of course import active energy. And for the moment, that's all you need to do. From the get-go, because this is a single phase variant, you'll notice that it's going to charge between 1.389, which is the datasheet minimum charging rate, and the maximum is 7.4, being a single phase Wallbox. You'll notice in terms of parameters, we've now got a new parameter labeled CFP, which is connection fee per hour. So just for the luxury of having your car plugged into the Wallbox, even if it doesn't charge at all, you have the ability of defining a connection fee per hour. In our office, for example, we're not doing that. But if it was more of on a commercial scale where it was more for large scale where you have lots of customers where they want to charge their car, and it's not like Loxone where we're grafting all day, so charging our car, maybe the connection fee shouldn't be necessary. We're going to set this to 0. But if there was a necessary connection fee for having your car plugged in, perhaps if you had loads of staff and you wanted the ability so that everyone has the opportunity to plug their car in and not just leave their car plugged in once it's finished, a connection fee may be appropriate. So I'm going to set this to 0 for the time being. And even without the Wallbox manager, if we double click on the Wallbox function block itself, you can see by default the max charging power charging mode is available, which is at 7.4. And you'll notice you now have an additional column which allows you to define a price per kilowatt hour for that mode. If I was to add other modes, so I'm just going to change this to max, and then we could have comfort and eco. I could say that this is 3.7 kilowatts, this is the minimum, and this is at my full unit rate. Let's say 28.9p. So is the comfort. Whereas with eco, let's say we were going to dynamically change the charging power limit using the input, we could say that if you're charging using the eco mode, then it doesn't cost you anything. And that's how we've got it set up here. If I click on the plus in terms of the input side of the function block, we have the set mode, which a pulse will just set the mode on the Wallbox, and then the limit mode, the SM, then a number. This is for dynamically limiting the charging rate of that mode. So of course, for max and comfort, we wouldn't necessarily do that, but for eco, we could. We're not worried about charging modes right now. We're primarily focused on the Wallbox. So what we can do, I will just do a couple more and quickly connect these. There we go. We're just going to adjust the power. It's not so important immediately that I adjust the power, just because I haven't actually got a Wallbox sat next to me to commission, but it's just good practice. And then with the three-phase one, we'll have a few more inputs to choose from. There we go. And finally, with this one. I'll double check the chat to make sure I haven't missed anything. Melvin, yep, the parameter for the connection fee per hour is in pence. Sorry, no, it's in pounds. So if you wanted 5 pence, you'd need to do 0.05. So you need decimal place. There we go. I'm not going to worry about the charging modes because they're not important for this exercise, but you can see here I've got my different Wallboxes configured with my meters connected. If I had them paired and I saved into the mini server, they would immediately become active and I could begin using them. But this is where the Wallbox manager is really important. So when we have this quantity of wall boxes, we could have the potential here of having well over 30 kilowatt of demand by having four cars connected. So if we then add the Wallbox manager, so this, we go to add function block, energy, and then Wallbox manager, you can see here that within this Wallbox manager, if I was to firstly look at the parameters, we can define a price for eco mode, which will be the default when you just plug your car in. And let's say you enable charging, or it's done from the app, or if it's done automatically, you're naturally just priced at the eco tariff. And then if you want to enter priority mode, that's when you you're charged a different unit cost perhaps. So that's why we'll have these two different parameters. Then when you're part of the Wallbox manager function block and we've got these different wall boxes assigned, the CFP parameter is also available in the Wallbox. And if we define the parameter here in the Wallbox manager, it's automatically relayed to the other function blocks retrospectively. And again, this is all in pounds, so or in the whole unit. So if you want to adjust it to, if you want it to be pence, then you would need to put the decimal place there. So for eco, let's say it's not going to cost them anything, but for priority, it's going to cost them 28.9 pence, and the connection fee is nothing for this example. You'll notice the object is not completely configured, and that's initially because we haven't got anything assigned. Now, if I double click on the Wallbox manager, we have a few parameters and a few things that we need to set up. So let's start off with perhaps the overall, it's referred to as a strand here. Let's say we have our full wall boxes. And with the quick maths, we are 14, we're looking at about 38.8, give or take. Yeah, 38.8 perhaps, or 36.8 kilowatts that we could potentially be delivering to EVs at any one time. Now, we could say that we have a limitation of, let's say, perhaps 25 kilowatts that at any one time these four wall boxes could be pulling. So if I create a strand, I can define here in circuit breaker 25 kilowatt. So this means that any wall box that's under this level can only draw from this 25 kilowatt. Got a missed chat. Yes, that's correct, Melvin. So Melvin asks, is the parameter on the Wallbox manager the connection fee per hour? This will this override the setting on each wall box, so it isn't possible to have one wall box set up differently? That's correct. So if this wall box was going to be set differently, then this would be part of, well, either independent or part of its own wall box manager, potentially with other wall boxes connected to it. So for this strand, let's say it's 25 kilowatt. Now, you could add like an overall wall box here, but then you could have another strand below this. So we can call this, perhaps this is going to have wall box 1 and 2 on there. And this one is perhaps limited to, I don't know, let's say 11 kilowatts. And these are two single phase wall boxes. So these two single phase wall boxes, so this secondary breaker that's in place is then serving these two wall boxes. So I'm going to click add wall box and tick 1 and 2. Now 1 and 2 is now fed from strand that we've labeled 1 and 2. What we can then do is add another strand to our main one, and we're going to create strand, and we'll label this one 3 and 4. Of course, you could add more wall boxes to here, but this is just an exercise. Now, these two wall boxes have a potential of 22 kilowatt in total. course, we're limited to 25 in total. So that means we have 14 kilowatts spare. So we can just put that in there. 14 kilowatt is remaining for this strand. Add Wallboxes, add these two Wallboxes, like so. I'm just going to assign the Wallbox manager to the central room. There we go. Close. So now you can see 4 objects assigned. Now it's telling me that not everything is connected, not everything's configured still. Although, yes, these Wallboxes aren't paired, but still. We have here the need for a couple of the inputs to be defined. So firstly, the power for eco charging. So this is how much power is available to be used through that eco mode on that cheaper tariff. This could be from maybe the energy manager, so monitoring your excess solar production and then putting that straight into our eco. It could also come from perhaps maybe related to the spot price optimizer, or if you've got an economy 7 tariff or just a scheduled based tariff, this could then define a value which gets set to the power for eco mode. So let's add an energy flow monitor. And do we have we have production power. Let's just add an energy manager for this example. And we'll call this Wallboxes. Our total switch on power is 1.389 because that's the minimum that one Wallbox can charge at. And the total rated power is 25 because we're never going to be exceeding 25 kilowatt. And I can just connect this straight into P Eco from L1 on my energy manager. And this is what's then going to be variably changing what eco power is available. Of course, you'd naturally finish off the configuration of the energy manager, but this is an example of where you can get your eco from. Now, as this is the Wallbox manager is related to load balancing, the chances are you're also going to have the load manager in play. So if I take the load manager, oh, we're not loading from the mini server. There we go, load manager. If we take the load manager, on the load manager, you have an output called AP, which is available power. And this is available power until you're exceeding your maximum permissible power. So here, let's say our total maximum power in this installation is 40 kilowatt. We've got all of our Wallboxes on and so we're at our 25 kilowatts. And that means that we're of course going to have then 15 spare. So our P max is then going to dynamically change. So we can connect AP to P max on our Wallbox manager. And that's what's finishing the configuration of the Wallbox manager. Naturally, you would of course use the CP and assigned power values for then feedback, whether that's back to the energy manager or whether it's for statistic logging or not. This is what would then be used for that purpose. What I'm going to do is I'm going to load the web interface for my mini server and again, change the screen share. Which is just realized the IP address is wrong for my mini server. There we go. Save that in. So we want to go back to sharing. Where's Safari? There we go. There we go. So we want to go to 10.74.2.99. There we go. Here's our mini server. Type in our credentials. So in the Loxone app, you can see here we have our Wallboxes. At the moment, of course, there's no vehicle connected. We have our energy manager. Now we've got available power. so available total power set to 40 kilowatt, and that's what's coming from our load manager. As in config, we told it that our maximum consumption at any one time could be 40 kilowatt. And because there's nothing being drawn at the moment, that's why it's getting that value. Eco power, of course, doesn't exist because the energy manager is not actually doing anything in this instance at the moment. And then for our strands, of course, we've got our overall strand. And once we've clicked in here, we've got our line protection is 25 kilowatt. Assigned power at the moment is nothing because we've got no eco power enabled. You can then see our secondary strands, which are limited to 14 kilowatt or 11 kilowatt. And then you can see the other value, the further details into these wall boxes. If I was to click into one, you'll notice that there are a couple of differences with the Wallbox function block in the Loxone app now that we've got it connected to the Wallbox manager. And we'll lead on to this in a moment with inputs as well on the Wallbox function block itself. You'll notice we can't then change the mode that the Wallbox is in. So we can't now change between max, eco, and comfort. Remember in config earlier, we adjusted these. So let's move back to config. If I go back to Wallbox 1, you can see now if I double click it, I can double click it to my heart's content, but nothing's going to happen. And that's because of the Wallbox manager. The Wallbox manager is now controlling this. Another message. So what we can do is we can now look at the other inputs that are available based on this. So at the moment, this is the default mode, which is eco. Eco is if you just plug your car in, whether you use the NFC to authenticate or whether you're starting it from the app. Of course, with the Wallbox manager, it's therefore also enabling billing. So there's going to be some sort of authentication there. That could be perhaps an NFC code touch. So then we can have a user ID associated with it as well. Now, when there is a need for priority, which I think, Melvin, this will answer your question you just asked, which is with the NFC code touch, when you normally present your fob, it takes the default output of 1. So I'll just add an NFC code touch function block to my page. So we have output 1, which pulse just enables charging. And that's what's just enabling eco mode. And then output 2 is enabling charging, but priority. So this then means that if, Melvin, your example was using as the boss, if the boss wanted to prioritize their car charging, he could press number 2 on the NFC code touch, present his fob, and his car will always take priority over the other cars that are currently in eco mode. One thing to keep in mind if you are configuring this is your NFC code touch default duration for the output is 3 seconds. Now, for the EC and the ECP inputs on the Wallbox, they will have 2 different behaviors, whether you're pulsing it for less than a second or greater than a second. If it's less than a second, a pulse enables it, trigger it again, it will then disable it. If you trigger it for longer than a second, the Wallbox will become active for the duration that your input is on. And as soon as you release that input and turn it off again, then it will disable charging. So just keep that in mind and definitely consider reducing the D-on parameter of your NFC code touch to perhaps half a second. So this is just then dictating that output 1 is enabling charging, and that's always going to be the default. You never need to press 1. You just present your fob, it enables eco. Press 2, present your fob, and it's priority. Particularly useful for this time of year when the sun doesn't come out at all. Now, when it would come to billing, of course, this is now the Wallbox function block itself, and you could potentially connect your user or username or user ID of last authorization. So whoever just presented their NFC fob or typed in their code, their unique identifier would then be given to the Wallbox function block to then create a billing structure. So let's now connect this to let's go UID. UID is then going to connect to the Wallbox function block of UID. Then we have an output for UID, current charge costs, and session end. And this is how we've got it structured in our office. Let's make that a little bit clearer so you can see easily what each thing is connected to. So here in our office, we have it very simply set up with a text generator where when session ends, it's triggering. We're taking UID into UID of the text generator, and input 1 is the current charge cost, sorry, the charging cost of last charge. And then the structure of the text generator would be something like we have the ability to take variables from the user. So we could take user from the user ID input, and we want to take the name of that user. We just type in name, and then we could put a semicolon, and we could put the pound symbol because we're now associating the charging costs, and we could take the value of input 1 with 2 or 3 decimal places, and then press OK. So then when session ends, we are going to be taking the username of the user who's presented their NFC fob. We're then going to be taking the charging costs from that session that they've just had. And then we could take the text that's which is created and send this to a log file. Now, this log file could be a CSV file stored locally on the mini server. It could be a syslog server or something like that that you have set up on the customer's site, or they could be reporting it to a web page with basic authentication, somewhere with where the person who's responsible for generating the invoice can grab that data. In our case, we've simply got a CSV file where every now and again, our branch manager, when doing the invoicing, he'll go to this web page with the CSV file, download it, and then he has all of that information. And the logger is simply set up as so. We have a logger. I'll name it Wallbox. We could label it Wallbox 1 for this instance, considering it's going to be for this particular Wallbox. In fact, we don't have to do that because we have 4 Wallboxes here. Use the same logger and it will report to the same file. And I could change this to be just wallbox.csv and connect this to the text output of the text generator. We can change the message when off to be nothing because when nobody's charging, we don't need to take a log of that. So we just want to take whatever value is passed to the logger from the text generator, which we are at the moment. Minimum time interval doesn't really matter because the chances of you unplugging and plugging in again and having a different charging interval within 5 seconds is so slim, I wouldn't worry about it. And now, every single time a session ends and you unplug the vehicle, the Wallbox will then take a log of who it was and how much they should be billed. Your question could be, well, what if they don't use the NFC code touch? Because we're enabling charging through the NFC code touch, their charging session will never be enabled, even if they haven't presented their fob. Therefore, they would have no energy put in their vehicle and there'd be no bill generated. So there's nothing to worry about there. Another message. So yeah, another message was user ID and the NFC code touch. What's the difference? So the user ID is the question really is here. If we go to, let's create a new user. So your user ID is could be anything. These 2 numbers can be interchanged. If you wanted to put in here a unique identifier, whether it's an employee number, a customer number, or whether you wanted to use it here, the NFC code touch will automatically grab that information anyway. We also have the ability to fall back to the username. So if there is no user ID used, the UID of last authorization will just fall back to the username. So if there is no user ID, it will just take the username of whoever presented their fob. On the flip side as well, if you are, I was going to grab my phone, but it's my camera. If you didn't want to use the NFC code touch, potentially it's raining and you need to run into the building, you could authorize your charge session using the NFC code touch function block in the app. And then the authorization of you being logged in with it, whether it's Face ID or NFC code touch, or Touch ID on a fingerprint device, that can then be your authorization to then generate the charging session. So you've then got technically 3 methods of authorization. That's pretty much the Wallbox manager. So just as a recap, load balancing, so we're protecting the infrastructure, power distribution, so that we can specify how much power each Wallbox can use, and also equally share the eco availability. We can define charging costs and also have visualization of it. So if we look in the grand scheme of things, we've just configured the Wallbox manager for 4 Wallboxes and set up the billing for it in a seamless exercise. Just so that we don't go away not understanding the structure of the command for this Wallbox logger, what we can do is we can just type in here so you know how you would then navigate to get this CSV file. So it would be the IP address of the mini server. Then we would want to go /dev/fs-get. So fs is file system, then get, because we're getting a file, /log, because remember it's in the log folder. We can confirm this because we can see the address of the logger is /log//wallbox.csv. If you were to navigate this on the local network of the mini server, you'll then be able to grab the CSV file from the mini server if it was saved locally on the SD card. So very simple to do. You could be just a link that you give to the customer if it's managed by them. As long as they have the appropriate user permissions, quite easy to do. Okay, so let's move on to the next topic. Believe it or not, we're 40 minutes in. We've covered one topic. Let's go a bit quicker. To be fair, the next topic is pretty much already done. What I will do is change the screen share, though, to the other screen. There we go. So the difference is with the Wallbox function block, when it's associated with the Wallbox manager function block, behavior changes a little bit. So we've now got a priority input. Well, the Wallbox function block itself without the Wallbox manager has a priority input, but it changes when part of a Wallbox manager. So it's no longer prio, it's just ECP, which is enable charging priority. This also behaves like the enable charging input. So if you just pulse it, it will then enable priority charging. There's also a mode output. So if you needed to do any custom logic, you could define that you don't bill someone if it's in eco charging or off priority charging is enabled. You could do some custom logic, and there's a mode output which then tells you whether charging's not allowed, eco charging's allowed, or priority is allowed. With the Wallbox function block itself, without the Wallbox manager, this feature is there. However, the difference is you have your up to 5 different charging profiles, and I think it's -99 if it's a custom one. This input can change depending on its desired function. Cool. So I don't really need to cover that. We've already done it. I think the most exciting thing, it's up there. I don't know. I'm just excited by it. The next exciting thing is the managed tablet function. The managed tablet function, in my opinion, yes, I'm biased, is a bit of a game changer. If you think about all of the projects you've done, regardless of the setting, when there's a need for a tablet and you need to pair it to the mini server, you're going to need to assign credentials. You need to then, of course, remember it. Of course, there's the occasion where the iPad's been repurposed, somebody's logged out by mistake, hasn't been used for a while because they've gone on holiday. It becomes a bit of a hassle. I've seen a lot of instances where partners have assigned the admin user to the iPad, and because there's different people using it, it could just mean that people are changing settings who shouldn't be, or disabling the burglar alarm if you're robbing somebody's house. These are all the things you don't really want to happen. With the manage tablet function, you're essentially pairing your tablet, whether it's an iPad or an Android, with your mini server like a Tree or Air device. This means it then gets a function block like the other connected devices, like the intercom, the NFC code touch, etc. And we can then control the iPad. There's no need to remember login credentials. We have function block support. This means that you can activate the screen. You can activate do not disturb, so that the screen goes blank and no notifications are going to pop up. We can dynamically change the screen brightness. So we could say that when the screen is active, i.e. when there's presence in the room, it's at 80%. And when there's no presence in the room, we could bring it down to 0% or 10% to preserve energy, preserve the screen so we don't get any burn. We can also see the battery level, not just the battery level in terms of percentage. I think it's in 5 or 10% increments, not 1% increments, but it's not the end of the world. But also we can see whether the iPad or the tablet is charging. This then means that if you have your iPad charging through a smart socket or a relay, or any principle of controlling the charge of the device, you can use the information from the manage tablet function block and essentially automate things even further. You can configure ambient mode in Loxone Config. So you can define the picture that's in ambient mode so that the customer or whoever's using it can't change it. And it also prevents users on the tablet from logging off. So let's demonstrate it. We've got a couple of questions. Would you need to set a MAC address reservation for the tablet, or does it work via something else? Hold fire, Melvin, because I'm about to show you. So let's jump straight into how it would be configured. We have to start, of course, on the config side. So if we change to screen sharing again, because I'm a novice. Don't know. There we go. There it is. We're getting there. So if we have a look within config, I don't know if I've changed anything recently, but I'm going to save into the mini server just in case. You'll now notice we have another option called managed tablets. This Zoom thing's in my way. There we go. So manage tablets. We can now go up to the top and add a new tablet. So adding a new tablet, what it then enables us to do is define the room it's in. So let's put it in, where would you have a tablet? Let's say the conference room. Installation location, if you can't see it, you're blind, so we don't need to worry about that. We could label it. So, well, my iPad's blue, so we'll call it blue iPad. Nice and descriptive. At the moment, we've got a couple of fields which are grayed out, and the reason why they're grayed out is because they're populated once you've paired the iPad. So device model, the operating system. You can see the default screen. So previously within the Loxone app, well, I say previously, always in the Loxone app, you can define whether it's favorites, central, rooms, categories, or a specific function block that's default on that device every time you open up the Loxone app. By default, the managed tablet will take the room it's in, which makes most sense. But of course, you could change this to whether it was the last used, favorite, central, or whatever else you've got here. Of course, in our instance, we haven't got a great deal of config, so we're a little bit limited of what we can choose. So we can go into, we show the central room, we can go into favorites, but also remember things that are here within the default screen may not be the full picture of what's in our installation, because what the iPad can see may be different to what you can see on your phone, because it's more of a communal device. So that gets me onto the user permissions. So user permissions, you can see here, manage permissions. If I was to press the 3 dots, it opens up as if it was a user. So we've got iPad, you've then got admin and the different users that we've created in our user groups. I can then go to the iPad and edit permissions. So we can now say, right, this mini server can view the web interface and app, obviously, because otherwise we wouldn't be managing it. Can this iPad update the mini server? Probably not. Can we do any of these? We'll just leave it for now. If you've already created a user group that you then want to have this iPad adopt all of those permissions, you could assign it here. Otherwise, you can select rooms or on a function block based level. We, of course, have done this all before with user management. So it's very much the same, but it's just configuring another user essentially. So I'm going to click on our 4 Wallboxes, our NFC, Code Touch, and what else have we done? The Wallbox Manager. There we go. So all of the function blocks we created, we want to show on this device. And yeah, that will do for now. I'll close this. So we've done our permissions. Now, if I go back to my default screen, you'll notice I have more options because it's giving me options based on the permissions this iPad is going to have. Let's go to Central. And I want to have my Wallbox Manager to be my default screen. So every time this iPad is at its default screen, it's going to be the Wallbox Manager. With the screensaver, we can either have it fully dim the display, or we can go into eco mode, which is showing the date, time, and the weather. Again, depending on the application. If you don't have the weather service, maybe you don't want it. So in our instance, let's say fully dim the display. And then we have the user interaction overrun. So it's a bit like when you walk into a room and then you leave again, the presence sensor has got that overrun time built into it. You can then adjust this for the iPad. I'm going to set this to the minimum, which is 30 seconds. We can then set the parameter of launching in ambient mode every time you open up the app by default, which will keep ticked, and then display a nice picture. We can then reactivate ambient mode after 1 minute, and this is again automatic. We can define the background image of ambient mode. So let's go for the beach because that's where I wish I was right now. Of course, I'm enjoying the webinar, but after this, we'll go to the beach. You're welcome to join me. We'll go to linked function blocks. Now, linked function blocks is when you're in ambient mode, on one side, you will have your default screen, and on the other side, underneath the time, you can have, I think by default, 3 different objects or function blocks, and then you can scroll through them as well. So you can define linked function blocks as well. In our kitchen, we've got the iPads showing the intercom, so the front door intercom, and then we can also see the status of the dishwashers. Now, the dishwashers are actually quite close, so we probably could use our eyes on our ears, but modern world, we want to use the iPad. So we have it displaying the status of our kitchen appliances. So depending on where the iPad is, you can then link different objects. There's no point here because we don't have any other objects to link. Click apply. Oops. Now, plain design. So if you wanted the, what's it called? The categories to show the colors that you assign to them, then you want to keep plain design unticked. If you want them to be white, then you want to tick plain design. You can even disable whether the iPad can, or I keep calling it an iPad, the tablet, but this is just an iPad here. You can also define whether this device can receive in-app notifications. For example, system status notifications. If the burglar alarm is triggered, will it flash up? If the intercom is rang, will it come up? So you can define whether this device is going to receive notifications, but then on another level, even if this device is receiving notifications, we can then limit which notifications. So I can say, this doesn't need to know about system status, the burglar alarm, and any alarms, but perhaps for the door controller and the intercom, we can see it because it's the conference room. We could have somebody attending for the meeting, although we are primarily viewing the Wallboxes, but you get the idea. So now we've done this, we can save into the mini server. Now, when it comes to the next steps, you have two options. You can either generate a one-time QR code, or you can generate a setup file. Personally, I'd recommend the QR code. So this QR code is essentially replacing the credentials for a user. If I was to click on this and press save file, let's put it on my desktop. Save. It will also open up in a PDF viewer. So you can see here, this is what is displayed. Now, what I'm going to try and do, whether it works or not, I'm not sure, is I'm going to try and screen share my iPad to my laptop and show you now the next steps. So desktop one. All right, everyone can currently see the screen. Now, let's hope that if I screen share my iPad, it will also work. I have no idea. I hope. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe if I come out of this for a moment, go back to the chat. Can somebody write in the chat right now? Can you see my iPad screen? It's quite difficult to see because my laptop doesn't show me now. Some people are a yes and some people are a no. Fan-diddly-tastic. Okay then. Well, what we'll do is we will show it the conventional way on my camera. So you can still see my camera. When I open up the Loxone app, the Loxone app now gives me three options. We have add new mini server. This is, of course, if it's opened up for the first time. We've got add new mini server. We've got set up as a managed tablet and view demo home. So view the demo mini server. I'm going to select set up as managed tablet. When you select set up as a managed tablet, you have the option to either scan the QR code we just generated, import the setup file, or pair manually. So we're going to set the QR code. So if I scan QR code, it will probably bring up my face. Yep, there we go. Nice ugly mug. And we're going to go to the back camera. So with the back camera, I'm now going to go scan the laptop. And I'm then prompted to set up as a managed tablet. So complete pairing. There we go. It's connected to my mini server. You can see here's the beach because that's where we're going after the webinar. We've got our default screen, which is the Wallbox manager. If I come out of here, you can see here, I can see the other applications that I have assigned to this iPad, which is the 4 Wallboxes. And I can't really see anything else other than the categories and rooms that my functions are associated with. I can come out of ambient mode and it just displays into the normal interface. It's just important to remember that after, I think it was 1 minute or 30 seconds that we set, that it will always return back to ambient mode. Or we could just press the ambient mode button, it will return. Nothing like improvising, hey, when technology doesn't do its thing. Okay. Now, if we go to go back to config. So a couple of things worth mentioning based on questions. It will always open up the front camera first because it assumes you've already wall mounted the iPad. It's not just so you can take a nice selfie for the Loxone app. You know, it might be nice for the ambient mode. And the other question was, is this just for iPads or for Android tablets too? It's also available for Android tablets. So any tablet device that runs the Loxone app is not available on mobile phones. I don't know what defines a tablet. I'm not that clever. Well, you know, I'm not going to put myself down, but you know, that's for the developers to worry about. But any tablet will support this function. Now, what I'm going to do is you'll notice the program is not identical. If I load from the mini server, you can now see under manage tablets, we have my iPad paired. You can see the model and the operating system. But notice it's currently red. The reason why it's red is because it's not completely configured yet. And that's because I haven't added the function block to my page. Oh, that's user error. So if I then click on the API connector, drag it out, you can now see that it creates a function block called tablet. This is messy. It's doing my OCD. Not great. Some good England there. There we go. So, tablet. The tablet is then going to, if we save into the mini server, and if I unlock my iPad, there we go. There you go. My iPad is now online. So you would have noticed there as well, the status LED next to the iPad will tell you whether the Loxone app is currently open. So if somebody's come away from the Loxone app or closed it or repurposed the iPad, it will show the iPad as offline, like a Tree device or an Air device. If this iPad isn't going to be wall mounted or a managed tablet where you don't want this function, you should treat it as a normal user device where it has a username and password. So, for example, usually I would type in my username and password for the office. It's also worth noting that you cannot move between different mini servers. It's locked to one mini server. So if you are using, this is my iPad that I use for here in the office, I also use it at home. If I want to view both mini servers, it's important I don't put it into managed tablet mode. To remove it from managed tablet mode, you need to use a username and password for a full access user, i.e. the admin user. Anyway, I digress. So I've saved into the mini server. My iPad is now here on connected to the Loxone app. If I start live view, you can see that the current display brightness is apparently 0%. I can assure you it's not because it's on. So I'll have a look at that. Current charging active. So charging is not active because it's not plugged in. The battery level is showing as 80%. It's currently on 78, so it's within 10 or 5%. And you can see whether the user interface is on, so whether it's active. So is somebody interacting with the device, which it is. And this is defined by the user interface overrun time, which is set in the parameters here. So user interaction overrun. We've also then got inputs. We've got parameter inputs for the display brightness, so you can dynamically change the display brightness if you want to. This could be based on night mode or different operating modes. We've got our do not disturb input. We've got our default screen. So if I enable the do not disturb input by inverting it and saving into the mini server, nothing happens. We'll wait for 30 seconds. There we go. So my user interface has now become inactive, and you can see that the display is now inactive. If I then tap on the display, you can now also see the display brightness has come up because I've interacted with the device, and user interface is enabled. And of course, in the moment after the user interaction, it will then go back to being blank because I've enabled do not disturb. That is the managed tablet functionality, essentially. Nice and simple to set up. It's like adding any other Loxone device. And as a recap, you can, no need for mini server credentials. It's just that QR code that we've got here. Once this QR code is used, it's inactive. So I couldn't then go get another iPad and scan this QR code. If I wanted to have two iPads having the same function, I would need to have two QR codes, but I could assign them to the same function block. So yeah, no need for credentials. You've got the function block support. You can configure ambient mode in config. And of course, you can prevent the iPad from being logged out. Cool. So we move the screen over. We've also got a couple of questions. Um, just people celebrating about the tablet function block, which who wouldn't? It's a fantastic block. So let's go back over to here. Oh, we've got a Q&A. Right, let's go over to this screen. There we go. So the next function, push notifications. Can't really demonstrate it on here, but it's more or less there to talk about. With push notifications, previously, anything from the Loxone app was treated the same as maybe a notification from eBay. It was just a notification from an app on your phone. We've now got some different levels of push notification. So you've got a standard notification, which could be potentially all maybe a custom notification that you've set up. You've now got critical notifications, which is from burglar alarm and fire alarm. This will break through any focus modes you've got on an iOS device, i.e. do not disturb, or like I have a work profile on that screenshot. So anything that's really important will always break through. And you can see there it's showing as a critical notification. Those of you wearing an Apple Watch, I noticed this the other day. Even if the Apple Watch is on silent, it will still make a noise. Then you've got time sensitive notifications. So this will show on your lock screen, regardless of if you've already unlocked your device and unlocked it again, it will still show intercom notifications at the top of your list of notifications before you, unless you interact with it. If you don't interact with it, then the time sensitive notification of the intercom being run will just show there. Then with the Android, for Android, you have different levels of notification levels. That would be just a general alert, doorbell, or default. So these can be set as different parameters and different responses within that Android device. Cool. The next thing is mini server health check. So with mini server health check, this is kind of adding on to a functionality that was already there back from 14.4 release, so last config release. That is the ability to now do a health check on the mini server itself. So more than just the technologies like Loxone Link, Loxone Air, and Tree, it's now like scanning the mini server. So it's checking the network functionality, whether it's set up properly, i.e. if you haven't put the IP address or the host name in the appropriate field, it will tell you. It will check that you're on the correct time server, comparing to your computer. So if you haven't changed the time zone of your mini server yet, it will then tell you and flag that up with you. It will then check the CPU usage, the memory usage, and the SD card usage as well. So the health check functionality, if you haven't used it yet, I would definitely recommend it. If I just move, which screen am I sharing? Yeah, that one. If I just move this over here, so I'll show you for a moment my in config the health check functionality. So if you just go diagnostics, you've then got Loxone health check. You can tick which diagnostics you want to run it for. So we can start health check, and then it will run it in detail. Depending on the size of the installation, this can take time. In this instance, it's just a mini server. I can see it's currently running a diagnostic now. It's not going to take a great deal of time. However, with a real world installation, if we take this office as an example, it's got 4 mini servers, a bunch of extensions, loads of tree devices. It took about half an hour, 40 minutes. And that's because it's taking the diagnostic check into so much detail so that when you leave site, you can be sure that everything's set up properly with nothing to worry about. Okay, another couple of questions. Other thing here about iOS users. So if you are, this was just a hint from Tyron about the notifications. If you are an iOS user and you don't want to be alerted by such critical or time-sensitive notifications, you can disable it on a device basis. So you can say, okay, don't alert me of critical or time-sensitive alerts, especially if it's an office and you aren't responsible for the building, perhaps, you can then turn this off. Okay. Another good thing to be aware of, the mathematical function blocks. With these, we have a couple of changes. Those of you who have used these logic blocks for some time will know that some of them have different behaviors. If we take the analog values like the additional and the min max and things like this and average, if you connect multiple values and multiple inputs to the function block, it will just take the value that most recently updated. However, now, similar to the AND function block, which is why I've got it there on the screen, if you have two inputs connected to input one, it will take both of those values into consideration for the calculation. So it means that if you wanted to add, I don't know, 8 values together, we've only got the add two way or the four way. We don't want to have loads of these additional function blocks all over the page. You can just connect multiple to the one input and you will still get the same result. So just simplifying the functionality. Melvin's already a great advocate for this function because he said we've got lots of nested add function blocks all over the place. So amazing. This could be useful for if you have multiple touches around the room, perhaps one in different areas, different areas around the room, and you want to take the minimum or maximum value, or you want to take the average. It's then enabling more potential if you have got multiple analog values. Zach, will they automatically update, or this is a completely new block? Nope, this is just updating the functionality and improving the existing function blocks. So if you have existing function blocks that are already got two values connected into it, then it will start adding them together as probably desired initially. We've then got a couple of changes in user management. There's a new change where we've always had the mini server update user permission. So you have the ability to tell a user whether they can update the mini server or not. But the ability to back up the mini server hasn't been available. So this has now been added. When we bring out a new feature, there needs to be a why. Why is this feature being brought out? And this is one feature within this webinar. I can't tell you why. And that's because the overall feature or product, it doesn't yet exist and it will do soon. So keep this as in your pocket as a nice surprise in the not too distant future. I'll probably see you in a couple of months for the next webinar where I can talk to you about this new feature. But it's good to have the mini server backup is already there. And ultimately the mini server backup file would be stored onto your computer. iPad wall mount. So we've had lots of requests. As of today, the new iPad wall mount is available to pre-order. The Apple 9th generation iPad was only 10.2 inches. Now we've got the 10.9 inch, the 10th generation iPad support. So your customers can go for the latest version with less bezel and get rid of the home button. You can now take advantage of the latest device. This is going to be shipping from March 2024. So just while we get stock over to the UK. And the existing iPad wall mount is going to be discontinued. We've still got lots of stock of them. So if your customers are already using those iPads, they haven't yet got a mount, nothing to worry about. You can still purchase them from us. Again, as always, they come with in silver or anthracite. One of the biggest pain points we've had partners experience over the years is getting the correct charging solution for the iPad. Now, this could be a physical lightning cable, or in this case, USB-C, that fits, but also like a PoE solution. Now, we've addressed this by now shipping a 90-degree USB-C connector with every wall mount. So every iPad wall mount, you will get a small adapter with it, so that it makes selecting the charger, whether you use the one it comes with, or whether you get your own PoE injector or something of the sort, you're always going to be sorted. So unless you have a charger the size of the Empire State Building, you're going to be fine. So that's going to hopefully save a lot of your pain points. So really, to cover this all off, of course, before we go through any questions, is just a recap of the product releases this year. Of course, so much of this is made possible through software because, of course, an iPad wall mount is an iPad wall mount, but the functionality, for example, that we can give the M-Bus extension through software, the Modbus Air, the DALI Air, the AC Control Air, and all the other devices are made through software. So as a recap, the iPad wall mount today, we've got the table lamp, the DALI Air, the 7 AC Control Airs, the Modbus Air, the M-Bus extension. These have all been released this year. The Horman for the garage doors, the 10-inch install speaker, the satellite speaker, got one over here, but it's connected to something, I can't pull it. And if you weren't already aware, the gold product line is now here to stay. No longer is it called the Vienna edition or called antique brass, or I don't know, something about Vienna. I think it's antique brass. It's now called gold, and it's here to stay. And this is including the ceiling light as well. So the Touch Pure, the flush mount presence sensor, and the pendulum. So Tyrone, I know you're watching. I'd like these gold pendulums over my desk. Let's hopefully come to an agreement. But other than that, thank you very much for joining us. If you have any questions, please do pop them in the chat, and I'll try and answer them as much as possible. We have got a couple on the Q&A. So can we get a recording of the webinar? Yes, it should be uploaded to YouTube maybe tomorrow, if not, ready for you to watch over Christmas. Another one was, is there options to disarm the alarm system using different users using the tablet manager? No, it will just tell you which tablet armed and disarmed it. So personally, if you have a managed tablet or a wall-mounted tablet, I'd never put an alarm on that device just because of the security associated with it. And Dan, you wanted to know why I've got a logo on my t-shirt. When a new Loxone office opens, we need a t-shirt that represents that country. We all know the London Underground, but of course, instead of being red, we needed to make it green naturally. So that's why it's got green on it and written United Kingdom, because we're just a tube station that you should visit.